We are almost at the end of Set 8 PBE, so it's time to start thinking about the actual season, the next ranked ladder, and what it's going to take to get there, which includes comp guides like this one. So let's get started. This is all about Camille. Camille has been one of my most consistent winning comps in the PBE, even after her most recent nerfs, which, if you're not aware, happened within the last few days. This gameplay in particular is actually post-nerf, and you can see exactly how strong it is. If you're learning to use and master this comp, here are the 6 things I'm going to show you in this video that are going to help you execute on this build every single game. If you're just joining me here, I actually posted videos on my other channel, but I decided to split things off to a dedicated TFT channel just so that I don't have a bunch of different games on the same channel. So I will link some of my other guides in the video if you do want to watch some other ones, but this is going to be the channel where all my TFT content is going to be posted. And if you're not aware, I am a Diamond to Master player. This season, I'm hoping to get Grandmaster, maybe even Challenger for the first time, so I'll definitely be posting a little bit more about that later. So let's get right into it with number 1, why this comp and what does it look like? So Camille is typically going to be a reroll comp because she is a 2-cost carry, so in pretty much every comp that you play Camille, you're gonna want to 3-star her unless you're just using her for the Renegade trait or to get to 4 admin. I love a good AD melee carry, and Camille fits the bill. She has disarming in her ability, which is very useful. She's very strong. She can tank surprisingly a lot of damage, and she pairs well with a bunch of AP carries, which we'll go into a little bit later. But overall, it's a very balanced comp. We know that sometimes melee comps can be tricky, but in this particular scenario, it has been perfect. The only real area I've struggled with this comp so far is a very tanky frontline comp with a lot of anti-AD items, but that is natural. But again, because she does pair well with some secondary AP carries, sometimes you can really get around those battles. So all around, very balanced comp. Based on what the meta looks like and with hero augments, which we're also going to talk about right away, reroll comps seem to be the go-to. I think especially early in the set, you're going to see a lot of reroll comps. So A, be aware of being contested, and B, be aware that if you don't do a reroll comp, you might struggle to hit your 7 or 8 comp because you're going to lose a lot of damage. They changed the stage 3, 4, 5, 6 damage to increase a little bit, so you definitely do not want to be losing too much HP during those rounds. Next up, let's talk about units. The base units for this comp, aside from, of course, Camille, who is your 2-cost carry, we have Lee Sin, who works well with Camille because he can keep her alive until you shred through their front line. Talon and Silas to pick up the Renegade active trait, and Blitzcrank to get your 2 admin. Other than that, and even within those units, you do have a little bit of flexibility. These are the 5 ideal units that I find gets you through the early game. But if you find a 2-star brawler to pair with Blitzcrank, that is also fine. You can maybe sub in Lee Sin later. Or if you're not gonna go for a super heavy reroll or supers comp, then you might even go for a 4-cost brawler like Sejuani that has more CC late game. We'll talk about more units within the actual variations, but we're gonna talk first about the hero augments and in general the augments that work well with this comp, because that's what's gonna set up your initial decision making. Here's a list of the augments that I've been going through, and these ones are not hero specific, so these are the ones you're gonna be on the search for. I recommend, especially right now in my opinion, it's best to save your reroll for your hero augment, and I'm going to tell you why. Especially with reroll comps, it is a little bit difficult to pivot because you've invested so much gold into rerolling for units. So if you get a hero augment unit that you cannot use, you either have to push another level just to put that unit in, or you're down an augment, which of course is going to decrease your power level. Where it feels bad to reroll for hero augments is there's no guarantee that you get a unit that works with your comp, so it still is risky. So if your first augment is, let's say, a prismatic augment, definitely if you don't like the 3 augments that you have but you already have a good start to this comp, don't be afraid to reroll, but just keep that in the back of your mind that you might struggle with the hero augment later. If you're fortunate enough to get the ideal hero augment, which is Camille, Hextech Retribution is by far my favorite between the 2, but Adaptive Defenses, which is a little bit more of a selfish buff for Camille, also works amazing. But with the supers comps and Renegade, Hextech distribution works unreal because it keeps boosting your damage the lower and lower number of units you have in the match. So it kind of allows your, hopefully, you know, last 2 units to start doing massive damage and clean up the fight. Another amazing augment for this comp, especially if you can find an early Silas, is the Kingslayer augment. They did nerf it, but it will give you that 1-star unit, the ability to be very tanky, and then you can really commit to your reroll. Other than that, any of the support augments for any of the other units that you're going to find work well. Or if you get to the 3rd augment choice and you still haven't got your hero augment, you're more than likely going to get a 3, 4, or 5 cost hero augment, and that is not ideal for Camille. However, if you can get the Viego augments, very good, because if you don't 3-star your talent, you can replace with Viego and transfer all the items, or just push 1 more level and add Viego in. So not a big deal there. Now it is time to talk comp variations. These are the 3 basics that you should stick to. However, nothing beats flexibility in TFT. If you're not finding these units, pivot. Make sure that you find other units that are at least somewhat synergistic with Camille and the other units that you're gonna find. So this is the most simple comp, like I mentioned, the 5 units before, plus the addition of Fiora, because that is going to give you the Ox Force trait, which I don't think is that strong right now. I actually think it's going to get buffed, but she is a good 2-cost unit. And then again, if you're re-rolling for Lee Sin, Camille, you can also re-roll for Fiora, and then that becomes very strong. Variation 2, this one's actually my favorite. So this one is 3 supers, which boost your damage by 20%, and then for every 3-star, you get an extra 5%. So it is mega fun once you start 3-starring everything. So you're going to have Lee Sin and Talon and Silas still. With the addition of Malphite and Gangplank, that will give you 3 supers. There is a scenario here where you also try to put Fiora in, but until you hit level 7, you can only have 6 of the unit. So if you get a ton of Fioras early and you have room on your bench, you can definitely save her, because then you will get the Duelist trait with Gangplank, which can add some more power later. And then again, if you 3-star Fiora, that's an extra 5%. I don't think it's needed though, so I would stick with these units. Or if, let's say, you absolutely are not finding Silas or Talon, Blitzcrank is another good one to put in here instead of Silas. You don't get the Renegade trait, but you do get the Admin trait and the Brawler trait. So those are kind of the 2 options in this scenario. This is definitely my preference for comp. So if you can go for this one and supers aren't too contested, this is going to be very, very strong. One last side note with supers, if you get some early Yasuos, he is a great carry with this comp as well. So you can do Camille AD, Yasuo AP, Gangplank to give the 2 Duelist. It's awesome. Here is version 3. So I have a combination of a couple of these comps in this video, but version 3 is going for your 4 admin. Couple things to note, definitely save all your Blitzcranks and make sure you 3-star Blitzcrank, because if you end up going level 8, one of your frontline as a 2-star 1-cost unit with no items is going to be useless. So I think prioritize 3-starring Blitzcrank or Lee Sin, one of the 2, but you're gonna need another frontline. So if you can 3-star Silas, great, or you might have to go for like a 4 Brawler, 2 Defender, 2 Aegis, something like that eventually. The benefit to this comp is for admin, you can end up getting 2 really good admin options that really boost the sustainability of your comp, the damage, the AP, the AD, it all works really well. Also, with Soraka being such an amazing carry, it's one of my favorite AP carries right now. If you don't 3-star your Talon, or if you don't 2-star your Viego, you can very easily transfer the items to Soraka. And this kind of is going to go into the items, which I'm going to talk about next. You're going to see blue buff that I have put both on Talon and Viego. That is the exact reason why. So for items, the ideal start is a sword, because Bloodthirster is pretty much a must on Camille, as well as Infinity Edge. Giant Slayer also works well on Camille. So all around, sword is your best bet. Also, bow is a pretty good option, because Titan's Resolve, again, Giant Slayer, or Last Whisper also can work really good on Camille. So those are your top 2 starts. If not, I guess you would go for Glove, or honestly, maybe even Cloak, worst case scenario. The only reason I would prioritize Cloak over the Chain Vest in this scenario is I just think Bloodthirster is more important than Titan's Resolve on Camille because of that healing, because of the shield. It has won me so many clutch fights. So as much as Cloak is the worst starter ever, in some cases I do prioritize it over the Chain Vest. Your 2 damage items are going to be the most important on Camille. For a third item, definitely Titan's Resolve, like I said, any kind of Bruiserous item. But if you get really good admin augments, have your Renegade and a good damage augment for Camille. I have built like Sunfire Cape or Warmogs in some scenarios. She still does so much damage and has more survivability, so that third item you do have a little bit of flexibility with. As I mentioned, one of the strengths of this comp is you do have a secondary AP carry, and you don't have to prioritize a lot of tank items other than maybe a Sunfire Cape on Lee Sin, because it kind of helps shred those really high health tanky frontliners. But with AP items, I find with Talon, I always build blue buff, because I find especially early mid game, he doesn't cast enough or do enough damage. Even if you do 2 damage items on him early in 2-star, I just find that his damage is never enough to finish off the enemy and get the healing, which is the main aspect of his kit. Once I started building blue buff, he started casting way more often and really started to do some work on their backlines. Because he can hop around to the backlines a lot, it's a really good way to start picking off some of their squishy carries while your Camille and your Bruisers work on the front line. Jeweled Gauntlet is probably my favorite second item for Talon, because it will transfer well to Viego or Soraka if you need, and it will just add that damage, which is never a bad thing. So that's pretty much all you need to know for items. Again, if you do have to pivot to a Soraka, the blue buff and Jeweled Gauntlet is amazing on her. And yeah, it just gives you so much flexibility, which is sometimes the problem with reroll comps is they're so specific. And this one, you can really have a lot of options, which is why I think it's going to be so strong. You might have already noticed the positioning as I've put these comps up, but pretty much Camille in the top right corner with Lee Sin next to her so that he will shield her is the best bet. And then what I do personally is I put the AP carry on the other side in the second row to make sure they don't take any aggro. Viego will jump into the largest group of enemies, and Talon will go to the farthest outside corner of the board. So I want to make sure that they stay healthy enough to start getting onto those back lines, and then you're kind of hedging your bet based on where your enemy positions. If they don't stack any front line on one of the sides, sometimes your Camille or your Talon or Viego can go directly into the back line, which is the ideal scenario. Otherwise, everyone else is just going to be tanking damage up in that front line. And then, of course, if you have Soraka and LeBlanc, they're going to be somewhere in the back line, positioning depending, you know, where you need them to. So scouting, again, is always a good thing to do. One last pro tip I really want you to be aware of is if you notice that your Camille is dying really early in the fights, move her back into the second row to ensure that she is not taking any aggro. This is more so a problem before you 3-star Camille, but just be very aware of that. You have to watch every round to see, is your Camille, you know, not doing enough damage or dying too early? And it's probably because they are stacking everybody on the right side, and then there's just too much aggro. So that's one tip. You can move her back just one row up, and then she'll immediately walk up without the aggro. By the way, if this is going a little quick for you, let me know in the comments. I actually re-recorded this video. It was actually 30 or 40 minutes long because I went into such detail, but then I kind of thought, do people want to watch that long, and do you need that much context, or do you just want basically what to do and then you can play it on your own? So if you like more in-depth guides, let me know, because that's more my style, but I do want to make this as accessible for as many people as possible. So if quicker is better, I can roll with that too. Okay, for the how-to of actually how to execute on this build, I'm going to give you a very quick overview. It's kind of hard right now with rerolling to know exactly when to level, because the game is definitely evolving. It used to be very simple. You're going to roll here, you're going to have this much gold, you're always going to go for 50. You have to be a little bit more flexible now, and especially because of the changes to the damage, that they're increasing the amount of HP you lose for each round. You can't afford to take too much damage, and so sometimes you're going to have to roll down. If you get 2-star 1 costs before you hit stage 2-1, I recommend staying at level 3 so that you can delay your level 5 and 6 as long as possible so you can 3-star your 1-cost units, because you're going to have typically 2 to 3 of those that you're going to want to 3-star. So giving yourself enough time without losing too much HP is the name of the game. If you do want to level up to level 4 immediately, that is also okay. You should have enough time to roll at level 5 and 6. The number one thing you do not want to do is slow roll for your 1 cost at level 5 when it's not happening. You're so far away from those 1 costs, you're going to spend a ton of gold and HP just trying to 3-star all 3 of your 1 costs. If you've 3-starred, let's say, Talon, but not Silas and not Blitz, it's time to move on to level 6, because it's way more important to reroll for your Camille and Lee Sin that you're actually going to have some items on. So I would say, unless you found all AP items early and you had to stack them all on Talon or something like that, definitely just keep rolling. Keep saving your copies, because most times you will 3-star them later. It won't be as soon as you want it to be. So ideally, you want to econ as much as possible. If you can get to that 50 gold in slow roll, which means any gold above 50, you're going to roll just looking for your units, that is perfect. But if you get to stage, especially 4-2 or 4-3, and you still haven't 3-starred a lot of your units at level 6, it might be time to move on, because you're going to start to notice some people are leveling up till 7, maybe they went fast 8, and then if you are losing by 5 or 6 units each round because you haven't 3-starred enough units, that's when I say maybe pivot to other comps. If you start finding some Sorakas and LeBlancs and have room on your bench, that's where I would start saving them, because in one game I actually got a pretty early high roll 2-star Soraka, and thank goodness I saved those first 2 copies, because I got down to 19 HP. I had a 2-star Soraka. I sold the Talon, scrapped the Renegade trade, put Soraka in, and I went on an 8-round win streak, and it got me all the way to 2nd place. If I had not pivoted and kept rolling, by the time I found those last 2 Talons, I would have been out. So you just have to be really aware that you have to be a little bit flexible, and that just takes practice, which is why I always recommend play this comp like 5 to 10 times in normals before you go into ranked, so that you can really master it, and then you can make those decisions like second nature. So really, those are the basics of this comp. If you have any other questions, answer them in the comments. I will answer every single one. Whatever you're wondering, feel free to ask as many questions as you want. I want you to be successful with this comp. I think it's a ton of fun, and if you want a really more in-depth guide, I can definitely make one of those as well. But otherwise, I think this is going to be a go-to comp this season, unless they absolutely nerf it. So let me know if you're having any success with this, and I'll be coming out with some other guides, because there are 2 or 3 other comps that I really am enjoying this season, and I want people to know about them and have success with them. So take it easy. We'll see you at the next video.